From the KUOW newsroom, this is Seattle Now. I'm Patricia Murphy with a roundup of today's top stories. It's Tuesday, November 4th. Happy Election Day. Ballots are due tonight. Here's Casey Martin.
I'm at a King County elections drop box. You know the ones, big, blue, and white with a little slot for ballots. There should be one near you. There are 85 of them scattered throughout the county. You can still put your ballot in the mail, but elections officials say people should find one of these boxes to get their ballots in on time. Haley Watkins from King County Elections says if you must mail your ballot,
we are encouraging folks to actually physically walk their ballot into a post office if they're choosing to mail it, to make sure that they get that all-important on-time postmark of Election Day or before.
She says so far there's been no issues with ballots coming in this election.
But we do see that turnout trailing just a few points behind where we would expect to be at this point in the election. So hoping to have a very busy Election Day in front of us.
Ballots must be in a drop box or postmarked by 8 p.m. tonight. Casey Martin, KUOW News.
By the way, check out KUOW's live election coverage beginning at 8 tonight at 94.9 FM and on the KUOW app. Seattle faith leaders are speaking out against the Trump administration's decision to partially fund SNAP following two federal court rulings. The 930,000 people who rely on SNAP in Washington state didn't receive their benefits November 1st, and it's not clear when partial benefits will arrive. Bishop Frank Schuster is with the Archdiocese of Seattle and Catholic Community Services of Western Washington. He says last year they prepared more than 700,000 meals for low-income people, many of whom rely on SNAP.
My friends, many worry that another Great Depression is on the horizon. I'm here to tell you, for many in our community, the next Great Depression is already here and about to get worse.
Schuster joined 24 faith leaders and Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal to demand an immediate restoration of full funding to SNAP. Meanwhile, in this time of increased need, local food bank operator HopeLink says it's increased the amount of food people can take home starting this week. King 5 reports that thousands of pounds of donated food have been coming in to HopeLink. Staff say they're still calling for continued donations, especially non-perishable protein items. SeaTac airport officials are asking travelers to be patient during the ongoing government shutdown. Flights have been delayed throughout the country, most of them tied to staffing issues. Some airport control towers are short-staffed right now, and some TSA agents who are working without pay are reportedly skipping shifts or taking second jobs to make ends meet. But SeaTac airport officials say it's still taking people less than 20 minutes to get through security checkpoints. Nonetheless, they're encouraging travelers to get to the airport at least 2 hours early. Before we get to our feature story, a few sports notes. Seattle Mariners manager Dan Wilson is a finalist for the American League Manager of the Year award. If Wilson wins, he'll become only the second manager in M's history to win the award. The Baseball Writers Association of America will announce the winner next Tuesday. And Mariners catcher Cal Raleigh is now officially in the running to become the American League MVP. The last Mariners MVP was Ichiro, who won the award back in 2001. That award will be announced next Thursday. All right, one last check-in. Before we hear about winners and losers in tonight's election, you have until 8 tonight to cast your ballot. Soon after, we'll start to see returns from across Washington state. KUOW politics reporter Scott Greenstone spoke with Kim Malcolm about some key races outside of Seattle City Hall.
Let's begin with the open race for King County Executive. We've got current council members Claudia Balducci and Gurmai Zahalai competing. What stands out to you on this one?
Very important race. Not only do you run the entire county that stretches from Shoreline to Seattle down to Enumclaw even, right? But it's the first time in 16 years that we've picked somebody, a new county executive, to run the entire county. And it's something like 18,000 public employees. It's a giant budget. It'll be close to $20 billion. county bus, county jail, county sheriff, all those things and many more, the county wastewater division. There are two very similar progressive Democrats with similar visions. They both will advocate, if elected, to raise property taxes, to avoid big cuts that could potentially come to the county in the coming years. They want to build more housing. Balducci is running on her experience. She has over 20 years of experience as an elected official, first in Bellevue and then on the county council. She has done things like pushed Sound Transit to open the 2 line ahead of schedule. That's the line over on the east side. Yeah.
Yep.
Zahalai, though, he has the endorsement of big names like Governor Bob Ferguson and Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal. He has also done incredibly well in the primary, surprisingly well. This could be a really close race.
Yeah, and I'll just note that Balducci is from the east side.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
Zahalai is from Seattle. Does that matter in this race?
I think it does. It is not been talked about enough, but if you look at the primary, you can see a line running down through the middle of Lake Washington. And on the west side of that line, Seattle, Burien, those, surrounding areas, Zahalai was favored very heavily. And on the east side of that line, the east side, Claudia Balducci was favored more heavily. And so the question, I think, in my mind is there were other candidates in the primary, Southeast King County, like Enumclaw. They went for the Republican who did not make it into the top 2. So where do those voters go? Zahalai has the endorsement of that Republican, but Balducci has leaned a little bit more on her endorsements from police. And I think Zahalai comes across as more of a progressive on those issues. So we'll see.
Yeah, we will see. So there are also multiple legislative races taking place. And I'm curious about the one that's attracted the most money. This will be the 26th legislative district spanning the South Kitsap County, including Gig Harbor, Port Orchard, the Key Peninsula, parts of Bremerton. What is going on there?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is the one race that Republicans are really well set up to potentially win and get a seat back in the state Senate, which would not give them anything close to a majority, but could be really key for future fights over taxes and things like that. And so, because of that, Michelle Caldier has won. She's the Republican. She has won in this district before with strong margins in the past. Because of that tax question that I mentioned, the GOP is really trying to make this race about taxes. But the Democrat who is in that seat, she was nominated by the Democratic Party to fill a vacancy, Deb Krishnadasan. She actually didn't vote for the Democrats' tax package. So she has kind of distanced herself from it and said, hey, don't blame me for the high taxes. It'll be really interesting to see what voters say there about whether or not they're feeling the hangover from the Republican leadership nationally or the Democratic leadership locally.
Yeah. Okay, moving from Kitsap, let's head over to Snohomish County here for a second.
Yes.
The race for Everett's mayor. Incumbent Cassie Franklin is being challenged by a former city council member, Scott Murphy. What stands out to you in that race?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. A lot of the narrative that has been flying around about these elections in general, particularly in Seattle, but I think also here in Everett, is this anti-incumbent feeling. People are fed up with the status quo at City Hall and they want to throw the bums out. But Mayor Cassie Franklin, she's taken a very tough approach on homelessness in the city, especially during her second term. So she's pushed, for instance, to make it illegal to sit or lie or even give food to homeless people near the city's shelters. Critics feel that her efforts have not helped homelessness. And so her opponent, who you mentioned, Scott Murphy, he pointed out at the top of his campaign website and in his materials that counts of homelessness have doubled since she first took office. And so I'm really interested to see what voters say about that sort of tough on homelessness approach and if he'll take a different one if he does win.
Yeah. How about an issue that could affect just about everybody here in Washington state? There is this one statewide ballot measure you've written about, and it's a bit of a mouthful, a dry one at that. State Senate Joint Resolution number 8201. People care about this one.
It's important. It's important not just because it's the first one on your ballot, but it actually does have a lot to do with your paycheck.
Yeah, and this has to do with long-term care insurance.
There's a couple questions here, and the question that you're not going to find in your voter's guide that I think it's really important to answer that this amendment is trying to answer is, how are we going to care for the many Washingtonians who are going to need an assisted living facility or home health aid when they're older, but can't afford it, right? And yet, at the same time, they make too much money from Medicaid. Lots of Americans, lots of Washingtonians are going to be in that situation, and we don't have an answer for how we're going to pay for it. The state's answer has been to take 58 cents out of every $100 that you make in your paycheck if you're a W-2 worker in Washington and put it in a fund. But that fund is probably not going to go very far with how expensive long-term care is. If you've ever put a family member in an assisted living facility or hired a nurse to visit them at home, you know how expensive it is. So,
yeah, and the population is getting older. It's not getting younger.
It's a problem right now. It's going to be an even worse problem in 10 years. So the answer is, maybe, the answer that Washington's leadership wants you to consider is, what if we took that money out of your paycheck and we invested some of it in the stock market? The state's constitution doesn't allow that right now unless we, the people, vote to amend it.
Exactly.
That's right.
And this has bipartisan support, this measure.
It absolutely does. So Governor Bob Ferguson is behind it. Republican Senate leader John Braun is behind it. It had a 2/3 majority passing the legislature, actually more than that, but that's the bottom requirement to get an amendment to the people. The arguments are, look, we can grow our fund better. We're good at investing as a state. We have generally good returns. There is a little bit of bipartisan dissent as well. There are Democrats, and even the GOP chair, Jim Walsh, actually voted against putting it on the ballot. They tend to have to do with the stock market, and just either on the progressive side, they have philosophical concerns with the stock market, or just the concern of, we can already invest this money in municipal bonds. The returns on that it's a lot more small c conservative, right? It's a lot more safe of an investment, so the returns are smaller, but it is something that we can do. And, voters actually did say no to an incredibly similar measure in 2020. Right. So, you probably remember what the stock market was like in 2020. Now it's a lot stronger. I do think that maybe voters and what they decide on this amendment will say something about how we feel about the stock market in this moment.
That was Kim Malcolm talking with politics reporter Scott Greenstone. Next time on Seattle Now, we'll recap the election results with Paige Browning. We'll get our first look at who's leading the mayor's race and bring you other key takeaways. Hear that Wednesday morning. That's all for today from the KUOW newsroom in Seattle. Our producer is Andy Hurst. The interview in today's episode was produced by John O'Brien, and I'm Patricia Murphy. Seattle Now and KUOW are members of the NPR network. See ya. Happy voting.